embrace Black culture. Realize that Black Americans do have a culture of our own. We are intelligent, we are innovative, we are extremely creative. A lot of things that we do in this country is the direct result of Black folks taking and adapting song and dance and art, and just realize that we are a huge puzzle piece of the America that we see today.
Greetings and welcome to When the Moment Chooses You. I am your host, Coach Charlene, and I am excited today to continue on with my theme. This is probably going to be the last one on Black history, but I have a wonderful guest with me today, and her name is Tiffany. So welcome to the show, Tiffany.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm so excited to unpack your story. The way that I met Tiffany, I actually reached out to her because on LinkedIn, you meet just very interesting people. So what really impressed me about Tiffany is her boldness. She's bodacious. She is a disruptor. And I absolutely love that. I love when people can really walk in their power and their truth and then transform people that are around them. So Tiffany, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself first?
Sure. So I am a native of the West Coast, born and raised in Long Beach, California. I went to school K through 12 in Southern California and then went to college in Northern California. So I have a little bit of experience in both of the Californias, which are very different. After college, I moved back to LA for several years where I did a master's and a PhD. And then moved to the East Coast to do a postdoc. I actually ended up doing two. Wow. And now I'm in Texas. So I've lived in 3 of the 4 regions of the country. They're all very, very different. And I'm glad that I've had the experience of living in 3 out of 4 because I get to see regional differences in the way we do healthcare, in the way we do nursing education, just in the way people live and thrive. And so it gives me a really broad understanding of the ways that we can impact health disparities.
That's awesome. So Tiffany, how long have you been a nurse?
I have been a nurse now for 18 years, believe it or not.
That's awesome. And your main area of expertise would be what?
Labor and delivery. I have never worked anywhere other than OBGYN. I've worked in labor and delivery specifically. And then for 2 years, I worked in an OBGYN clinic, which I really loved because that gave me a view into the outpatient setting and how we deal with people before they're admitted to the hospital. And that really sparked my interest in sexual and reproductive health disparities because I realized as a labor and delivery nurse, it's great that I'm caring for people as they are in the last stages of their pregnancy. But a lot of times the education that they need and the real interventions that they need come long before that. And so I really got involved in a lot of clinic-based work and really enjoyed it.
Okay, that's wonderful. Well, Tiffany, this month I decided to do a series on Black history. And so I would love to hear from you. Why do you think Black history is important? And you can share any wonderful story that you have in addition to that question.
Sure. I think Black history is important because Black history is American history. Black history is global history. Black folks don't just exist as African Americans in the United States. Black people are all over the world. And I think that when we begin to understand just the depth and the breadth of history that comes from Black culture, we can start to appreciate Black people today for their contributions. We can begin to appreciate all of the contributions that came from those before us. And we can start to really look at our biases and start to ask ourselves questions about why Black folks, particularly in the US, still have such hardships, why there are such huge disparities in healthcare and economics and education around Black people. And I think that encouraging people to learn about the history of Black folks is where that all begins.
Yeah, I think that's amazing because I was sharing on the podcast before that. I remember taking Black history in middle school, and it was taught by a white professor, and he totally did not know anything. He just like gave us a book and said, "Read this book," but there was no investment, and so therefore, the kids just kind of went on, and so I really didn't learn my true history until I was an adult. And then I was able to search it out for myself. So it was almost like it was hidden so that you can see that, oh, you were a bunch of slaves and that was it. And so it was so empowering to really actually do the education for myself. And that's where I start being empowered to think how all of the different inventions and just a lot of stuff that we have done and we have contributed that really would give people a sense of value, or you know what I mean. Like when I look at the stoplight, I didn't know that was created by us, so yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm wondering though, Tiffany, like with your experience as a Black woman, can you share some stories that you've encountered on your journey?
Oh, sure. There have been many. Two of the, I'll say three of the biggest that have impacted my career happened very early on. The first two happened when I was in nursing school. The first semester of our clinical experiences, a friend and I were in the same group, and we were scared like all nurses are the first time they walk into a hospital. And so we kind of buddied up with each other and we were like, we're going to make it, we're going to be okay. And during it was like either our first or second day of clinical, my friend had a patient who was a white lady. And when my friend walked into the room to introduce herself, this woman said to her, "Oh, it's okay for you to take care of me. I'm happy to have you take care of me. I have a little nigger boy who cuts my lawn." And I mean, the hurt, right? Yes. My friend came out and talked to me and I was like, oh my God, I didn't know what to say. And we had an instructor who we didn't feel comfortable bringing these types of issues to. We did not have any Black instructors in our program. There were only 7 Black students in our program. By the time we started clinicals, there were only 6 of us, and out of 150 students. And so we were a very small group and did not always feel supported. And so we just kind of clung to each other and tried to encourage each other. And that situation caused me to look for support. And so I found a chapter of the National Black Nurses Association in our city, in San Jose, and we joined right away. And she and I went through the rest of our nursing program with the National Black Nurses Association and South Bay Black Nurses Association having our backs. I mean, that first Friday of every month is when we had our meetings. And she and I would go to those meetings together. And those women and men loved on us. They really cared about us. They made sure we were okay. And I mean, okay, as far as financially, if we were lacking something, they would press a $20 bill in our hands. If we needed food, like we always had food at these meetings. And so they would give us the leftovers to take home. We were broke college students,
Right.
And so we always knew, hey, after that meeting, we're going to have food for a couple of days, and they cared for us in a way that I had not experienced with other professionals, not even with my professors. I knew that my professors cared about me getting through school, but the women and men of the National Black Nurses Association cared about me as a person.
Wow.
And that was really, really important. So that was the first situation. After that, things started to get a little interesting. During one of our last semesters, actually it was our maternity nursing semester in school, we had to do these group projects where we talked about various cultures and how they deal with pregnancy, how women deal with pain in pregnancy, just all the cultural aspects of pregnancy. And a white classmate of mine was presenting with her group, and she said, very proud, "Black people eat dirt." And I was like, what did she just say? And I was looking around. I was the only Black person in the class, right? And I was just like, oh God. And my teacher, who was an Asian woman who had not too long before come over to the United States, looked at me and she said, Tiffany, is that true? And I just thought, oh God. Like,
I know, the only one.
I'm the only person in here. I do not represent Black America. But, you know, and I said, no, that's not true. And I took that classmate outside, actually, after their presentation was over. And I said, you know, you said something really offensive in there, and I just want to know what you were thinking. And she said, no, it's not me. That came from the book. I can show it to you. That came from the book. Said, no, the book said that Black culture is involved in the ingestion of pica or pica, depending on how you pronounce it. That's not dirt. It's more clay, but the book doesn't say Black people eat dirt. That was your interpretation of it. And I let her know there's something about you that interpreted it that way and felt very comfortable saying in front of all of our classmates that Black people eat dirt. I said, dogs don't eat dirt. Why would you say something like that?
Wow.
And we never really saw eye to eye after that. But
I think that was so awesome, Tiffany, that you hit it. You nailed it right there. You pulled her to the side and you tried to educate her. And obviously she didn't really receive it, but your boldness in doing this. So I bet, you know, being the only one there has been challenging.
Very challenging. That was my first experience actually speaking up in the moment and saying, you know, hey, this is not okay, and not relying on the person in charge to step in and take over. I just wasn't going to let her get away with that. And that sort of started a trajectory of me speaking out and speaking up for people who look like me, who are often misunderstood or lied on, you know, or statistics make it seem like there are things happening in our culture that really aren't. And I speak out about it because it's not okay. And nobody else seems to be speaking up.
Well, that's amazing. So, okay, wow, that was a couple stories. Let's hear some more, because I know you got some more.
That's funny. Well,
any more that you think could actually bring awareness for people so that they can learn from it?
Yeah. When I actually became a nurse, graduated, became a nurse, and was offered a job at the hospital that I did my senior preceptorship at, I was glad to accept it, really liked that hospital. And when I got there, I quickly realized I was the one and only Black staff member in labor and delivery. Not just Black nurse. We had no Black techs. We had no Black clerks. I don't think I ever saw a Black EVS person. There was one Black nurse who worked in the antepartum unit. And because of that, I used to pick up shifts over there, or if they wanted to float somebody to ante, I would volunteer. Hey, I'll go, because I felt more comfortable in antepartum. But there were probably 70 or so employees in labor and delivery, and I was the only Black one. I was a new grad, and no other new grads were hired on with me. And so I was literally by myself. And I remember one night coming to work. I was off orientation at this point, working a 12-hour shift, and nobody talked to me the entire night. I spent my time staring at the computer screen because nobody would talk to me. And I remember people would say things like, if I would say, hey, I have a question. Can I ask you something real quick, you know, about my patient or whatever? People would say, sure, but you only get one, you know. And they thought it was funny, but I didn't find that funny. I was new and I was alone in more ways than one. And I decided after that night where nobody talked to me, I would leave that hospital. And I put in my notice. I finished out my 1-year contract and I transferred to a sister hospital. And the nurses actually apologized to me, several of the charge nurses. And they said, we didn't realize what we were doing. We didn't realize how mean we were being to you. And we're sorry. But at that point, I was done.
Yeah.
I left and I said, I will never be treated that way again, ever. By a nurse, by a physician, by the CNO. I don't care who it is. You will not treat me less than human. And I've just never accepted that type of behavior again.
Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful. It reminds me of a story that happened to me as I had just started my, I graduated and got into this new grad program. And it was my first day. So I got my little white scrubs on, all of the white, and walked in, and I get a tap on the shoulder, and she goes, she's a blonde lady. She goes, "Oh, you must be our housekeeper." And then she kind of like turned her nose up and then turned around. And I was like, I mean, you're alone. You're kind of like by yourself, and I'm just like, wow, that's horrible. Like now my fleshly side of me wanted to do something about it. But I was like, I just started this new job. Let me just skate. Let me just stay under the radar, and then you start getting into this. At that time for me, I was trying to stay under the radar. So I wasn't like you, Tiffany. I wasn't speaking up. And I think a lot of people, a lot of Black people in particular, are not speaking up. They're just taking it, and they're just coasting up under the radar, so to speak. And I tell you what, I coasted for so long, and then finally, I think what really did it for me, which I don't know why it took so long, but I'm just glad that it happened. But when the death of George Floyd, or the murder of George Floyd, happened, that's when I actually went in. I'm a prayer warrior, so I went into prayer, and then I heard these words of, what you do in this moment will determine your destiny and dictate your future. And so I had to move from that anger and that anguish to action. And then I began to speak up like never before. And I mean, boldly, calling things out and sharing information and all of that. And I mean, it felt so liberating to be able to do that. So I really, really treasure you for being able to be a disruptor like that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So my other question I have, let's talk about some barriers and some challenges, that you face for being the only one.
I would say one of the biggest challenges is just feeling like you don't belong. And then because of that feeling like you have to prove yourself. So, a lot of us here growing up, you have to work twice as hard to get half as much. That's something that's instilled in us.
Yeah.
And I found that to, in one way, be true, but in another way, realize that it was me not feeling like I was enough because I wasn't being accepted in the environment I was in that made me push so hard and fight so hard to get the same things that some of my coworkers were getting or some of my classmates were getting. But once I realized these people aren't smarter than me, they don't have they have knowledge of more resources than I do a lot of times, but they don't necessarily have access to those resources more than I do. I started to realize that the playing field was not as staggered as I believed it was. I was just made to believe it's that way.
Yes, that's
and
good.
So I started to seek out mentors. That's something that helped me a lot. And that's whether these mentors were people I actually knew in person and interacted with, whether they were folks that I met online, or even people that I never met in my life and might not ever have the opportunity to come across, but I look to them for inspiration and I sort of watch how they move and try to model myself after them. That's helped a lot. That and building camaraderie with people who are like-minded. That doesn't always mean they're Black.
Yeah.
I would say a lot of times they are, but I have very close Hispanic nursing friends, white nursing friends, Asian nursing friends. We run the gamut. And as long as you understand me and where I'm coming from, and you don't have those biases that I see in a lot of other folks, hey, we can rock together. I don't care what you and so I try to build really, really strong collegial groups to be around me and build me up.
Yeah, I'm wondering, you talked about mentoring. So as you were navigating through your journey, did you see any people that were directors and managers and senior leadership that were Black?
So the second hospital that I worked at, one of the women of the South Bay Black Nurses Association, she was the assistant manager. She was the assistant manager on night staff. And my relationship with her is the reason why I went over to that hospital. I was just telling her about my troubles at our sister hospital. And she said, oh, come over and work for me. She was the only person that I had seen in an administrative position that was Black up until that point. About 3 institutions later, I had a Black manager finally. First Black manager I had, and that was at a hospital in Los Angeles. I have not had a Black manager since. And that was in, oh gosh, I worked for her from 2011 until 2016. She's no longer there. I don't know if they have a Black manager or not, but I've never worked for a Black women's services director. I've never worked for a Black CNO or chief nursing officer. I've certainly never seen a Black CEO at any of the places that I've worked. I know of some now, but I haven't had the opportunity to work for them. And that's a little bit disheartening, especially knowing I moved to Texas from Philadelphia. Philadelphia is, depending on the statistics you look at, anywhere from like 41, 42 to 46% Black. And there are very few Black leaders in that city, in the healthcare system and in the educational system where I come from. And it's very sad.
Yeah. What would you think about that? Do you think that, what's your thoughts about that? Are the nurses searching for that? Are they ready to advance to that level, or are they not given the opportunity to seat at the table? What do you think?
I think Philly's a really interesting city. It's very unique in that there is a really high level of poverty. It's actually the largest big city in poverty. And it's also interesting because there are a lot of educational institutions. So in the Philadelphia metro area, there are about 80 colleges and universities. And so you have a lot of what we call transplants, people that just come in, get an education and leave. And so a lot of the people who are Black in the city are the folks who live there. They've grown up there, like this is their life. The people who are not Black are the people who are coming in, grabbing an education and leaving. And so you see a lot of frontline workers who are Black, but they're lower on the totem pole. They're the EVS workers. They're the registration staff. They might work for the city trash company or water company, something like that. But the people who are running the city, the people who are running healthcare in the city, the people who are running the colleges do not look like the residents of the city. And that's been a huge problem. The residents have an issue with that. I don't know what's going to bring about change. I actually started looking this up, and I wrote an op-ed about it in the Philadelphia Inquirer. And I found that only 6% of the city's nursing faculty were Black, but we have more than 40% of the city's residents are Black. It just doesn't make sense.
Right. It needs to be looked into. Like, I wonder if anybody has taken the time to look into it to see what's going on there.
Sadly, I don't think people care unless it affects them directly, which is one of the reasons I'm an advocate for our regulatory agencies looking at diversity. I think that if you're a school of nursing and you're in a city that's very diverse, your student population and your faculty population should reflect the residents of that city. And when that's not happening, somebody needs to start asking questions. What is going on around here?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, normally, Tiffy, toward the end of the podcast, I love to get some little wisdom nuggets from you. So if I asked you the question of what is Tiffany's top 3, especially on your journey that you've had, what are top 3 lessons that you've learned that you think could bless other people?
I think my top 3 lessons would be to, 1, go after what you really want. Don't let anybody tell you no. 2, to make sure that you build a strong community around you, just to hold you up and to be mentors. And I would say 3, keep your faith intact. I don't think that I would have gotten this far in my career without having a strong faith in God. There were times, especially at the beginning of my career, that I cried a lot. I felt really alone and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. But my faith is what kept me holding on. And I thought, if God brought me here, I'm here for a reason, and he's going to give me the strength to withstand whatever comes my way. And that's what has kept me going. And those are the three things that I would recommend to anyone else.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, as a nurse, Tiffany, I'm going into another question. I just thought of something I'd really love to tap into. So, we've been talking about this 3 years of the double, triple pandemic, and so for nurses in particular, is there any advice or anything that you can give to nurses that are kind of at that point of burnout, fatigue, tired? Maybe ready to leave the profession or something. What would you encourage them with?
A lot of people might not like this, but I actually encourage nurses to know and understand their power and then walk in that. We are the largest portion of healthcare providers in this country. There are 4 million of us. We have power that we don't often tap into. The conditions, the working conditions that a lot of us experience don't have to be. And I'm not suggesting that people walk off the job. I mean, sometimes that happens and is necessary. But I think that if we band together and really approach leadership and let them know what our issues are, what solutions we have to some of those issues, we can get a little bit further than we are. A lot of times I see nurses sit at the nurses station and complain about this, that, or the other, but we don't band together and use our voices, to make change. I think that if people really started to realize the power that we have, simply because of the sheer number of us that there are, and then because the public trusts us so much, we could really get some things done.
Yeah, wow, that's really awesome. Now, what about a younger person coming up? Would you give them any advice, especially if they want to go to nursing school? Now, wait, let me ask you a question first. Was it easy for you to go to nursing school financially?
Financially is an interesting story. So my mother told me when I was a senior in high school, look, we don't have money for you to go to college. So I see you trying to apply to colleges and everything. I'm just letting you know, I don't have anything to help you. But she said, I will try to help you as much as I can. We just don't have anything saved. So I said, okay. That let me know I needed to go to a school that I could afford to pay for out of pocket. So I went to a California state school. And at the time, our tuition was like $700 and some odd a semester. And so I did work study my first 3 years of nursing school. And starting my second year, I began to get scholarships. I told myself that I wanted to meet a goal of having enough scholarships my senior year that I did not have to work anymore. And I met that goal.
Wow.
I
Awesome.
received more than $50,000 in scholarships during my time at San Jose State. And I think that there's nothing unique or special about me. The money is out there. A lot of people just don't search for it. I tell people about scholarship opportunities every chance I get. I discourage people from taking out loans. You don't have to. I don't recommend that you do. I have 4 degrees and I've never taken out a college loan.
Wow.
It's possible. You just have to be very strategic. And so I talk to young people about being careful the type of school that you go to. I know you might want to go to the private school with the big name that everybody talks about. Can you afford to go to that school? Right. Is that school going to give you money to go there? If not, there are other ways to go about it. And I remind people that your first degree is not the most important unless it's your last degree. If you plan on getting a master's degree or a doctorate, those are the schools that you really want to pay attention to. I encourage folks, go to community college, go get your bachelor's degree at the state university where you can pay in-state tuition and it's, pretty inexpensive. You don't have to seek out these big name schools right away. It's unnecessary.
Wow, that's great. How did you know how did you know to go about the scholarships? Did you just got hungry and just start searching online or what?
So when I was in high school, I did a couple of searches on, I think it was called like FastWeb or something at the time. And I didn't get any scholarships. When I was a freshman in college, I don't know where it came from, but I think like during my application, I clicked a button or something, marked a check mark for putting myself into like a bucket of scholarships. Just whatever I qualified for, put me in. And my second semester of my freshman year, I got like a $300 book scholarship. And I was like, oh, wow, somebody gave me a scholarship. That was what spurred me to start looking. And so I became very strategic. I had enough money to not work my junior and senior years. And so what I would do was I figured out around about the time that scholarships are due, it's almost always around tax time. So April 15th. And so from like January 1st through the beginning to middle of March, I was on a hunt. I would go to the scholarship office every week. I would look for new scholarships that I qualified for. I would look online for scholarships that were given to students who were part of the different organizations I was a member of. I talked to my church. I mean, I told everybody I knew that I was looking for scholarships. So it got to the point that people would start coming to me. My hairdresser would be like, hey, I heard about this scholarship. You should go look it up. And I just applied for everything.
That's awesome.
It paid off.
Yeah, that is awesome. Well, it has been such a treat to have you here on the show. So, Tiffany, I'm going to give you one last word that you would love to encourage the people with. And then another, if there's a way that they can get in touch with you if they'd like to.
Sure. I would say my one last word, especially since this is Black History Month, is embrace Black culture. Realize that Black Americans do have a culture of our own. We are intelligent. We are innovative. We are extremely creative. A lot of things that we do in this country is the direct result of Black folks taking and adapting song and dance and art. And just realize that we are a huge puzzle piece of the America that we see today. You can get in touch with me on LinkedIn. My handle is Dr. Tiffany Monique. I am also on Twitter at Dr. Tiffany Monique, for the time being at least. Facebook is more for friends and family, but yeah, I'm really active on LinkedIn and a little bit on Twitter.
Yes, you got to check out our LinkedIn page. It's like off the hook because she's a busybody there and she's making a difference. And I really appreciate all the work that you're doing and look forward to having her back on the show when we get to Black Maternal Month. I'm going to call it month instead of the week. So thank you so much for being on the show, Tiffany.
Thank you.